Celebration can be diverse in form and include various actions. How do we celebrate great events in our lives? King David expressed his joy in celebration of God by leading God's people in music and dance. As David had been newly crowned king, the relocation of the ark was a major act. It was significant that one of David's top priorities was related to Israel's spiritual life. David consulted with his officials, and his proposal to move the ark was met with enthusiastic agreement. And that brings us to our key verse for today, which reads, "And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manners of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps, and on psalteries, and on timbrels, and on cornets, and on cymbals." 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 5. One of the significant themes in 1st and 2nd Samuel is the Ark of the Covenant, an object of overwhelming significance. It contained the covenant between Israel and the Lord. It was a place of divine revelation and was, in fact, the Lord's throne. It was captured by the Philistines, but returned to Israelite territory when it became a nightmare to them and proved too embarrassingly powerful and humiliated both them and their God. It stayed in that territory for about 70 years. When David captured Jerusalem, he purposed in his heart that it should be the city where God was to be honored and worshipped. As such, he sought to bring the ark, the symbol of God's presence, there. As respectful and well-intended as David's effort was, however, it violated Torah guidelines regarding the transport of the ark. David had intended to move the ark to Jerusalem, but the tragedy in verses 6 through 8 caused a detour, and David's plan was temporarily shelved. The ark was transferred to the house of Obed-Edom. When David heard that the house of Obed-Edom has received signs of God's favor due to the presence of the ark, he revisited his original plan to bring the ark to Jerusalem. But there was to be one significant difference between the two attempts to transport the sacred throne. The second time, the Levites carried it on poles, not transporting it on a cart. The requirements of the law were now dully observed. As soon as the procession started on its way without any sign of divine displeasure, David offered a sacrifice as a thank offering for the prosperous commencement, and an intercession for the successful completion of the undertaking. For the occasion, David had prepared both his capital city and himself. At the moment of David's triumph, when the ark had successfully entered Jerusalem and passed through the royal fortress, David's wife Michal had no interest in all the religious excitement and display. Michal thought David degraded himself by this public exhibition, which, however it might have become one of his inferior servants, was unsuited to his dignity. As it was, she despised him for the very qualities that made him great, namely devotion to the Lord and spontaneity in worship. David's unbounded enthusiasm for his God expressed itself in leaping and dancing before the Lord. Michal did not appreciate his enthusiasm. And that brings us to our key lesson. David was intentional about bringing the symbol of God's presence to Jerusalem, and so likewise we must be intentional about cultivating God's presence in our own lives. Do you have a plan for your spiritual growth? Do you have times devoted to prayer, study, and personal worship each week? Are there certain times of the year when you fast or spend an extended period of time alone with God? When moving the ark, David had the support of Israel. In addition to 30,000 warriors, a large company of Israelites went with him to retrieve the ark. They sang, danced, and offered sacrifices. The church exists as a community to encourage and equip. As a body, let us support one another as we pursue the things of God and create an atmosphere of sincere worship. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to iLights. Heavenly Father, fill our hearts with what we truly desire, for who we truly seek is you.